Why these 20 vegetables were banned from gardens. People used to take pride in their backyard gardens, rows of colorful crops, strange vegetables from seed catalogs, and heirlooms passed down through generations. But not every plant belonged there. Some turned out to be toxic. Others took over the yard, the neighborhood, then the whole ecosystem. What started as helpful or pretty ended up banned, blacklisted, or quietly removed. Today, we're looking at 20 vegetables and garden plants that were kicked out for good reason. 20. Rosary Pea. The rosary pea has small, bright red seeds with a black spot, often used in jewelry, rosaries, and crafts. But those beautiful beads are hiding something deadly. Inside each seed is a toxin called abrin, one of the most poisonous naturally occurring substances. Just one seed, if crushed or chewed, can be fatal to humans and animals. In many gardens, rosary pea was once planted for its ornamental value. It grows as a vine with delicate foliage and attractive seed pods, but its danger outweighs its looks. The seeds can easily be mistaken for candy or beads by children, and even handling them while damaged can be risky. For all its beauty, this plant is a serious hazard that gardeners have since learned to avoid completely. 19th, Bradford Pear. Once planted across suburbs for its lovely white blossoms and uniform shape, the Bradford pear quickly became a cautionary tale. It was marketed as the ideal ornamental tree, fast-growing, showy, and compact. But what people didn't realize was just how fragile and invasive it would become. Its branches are notoriously weak, often snapping in heavy winds or under the weight of ice, and creating hazards in residential neighborhoods. Worse, Bradford pears cross-pollinate easily with other pear trees, leading to the rise of aggressive, thorny hybrids that crowd out native plants and ruin local biodiversity. What started as a beautiful, low-maintenance landscaping choice turned into a widespread ecological nuisance. Many cities have now banned the planting of this tree altogether, warning gardeners and homeowners to avoid what was once considered the perfect tree. 18. Chia. At first glance, Chia appears to be a gift to any garden. Also known as tree spinach, it's a leafy green that thrives in poor soil, loves the heat, and grows rapidly. It's packed with protein, iron, and calcium more than many common greens, and can be harvested again and again without much effort. But here's where things take a turn. Raw chia contains hydrocyanic acid, a toxic compound that can be dangerous if consumed without proper cooking. Traditional methods involve boiling the leaves for several minutes and discarding the water, but not everyone is aware of this. Some folks tried eating it raw or cooking it like regular spinach, which wasn't enough to remove the toxins. That led to serious health issues in a few cases, and the plant quickly earned a reputation. Although it is still cultivated in some regions with care, most gardeners have simply stopped growing it. The risk just wasn't worth it. 17. Kudzu. They called it the vine that ate the South. Kudzu was introduced to the U.S. in the 1800s to stop erosion. At first, it seemed like a brilliant solution, fast-growing, resilient, and even a little charming as it blanketed hillsides in a soft green wave. But then, it didn't stop. Kudzu can grow over a foot a day, swallowing trees, power lines, and entire buildings under a thick, tangled mass. Farmers couldn't control it. Cities couldn't mow it fast enough. Entire ecosystems were smothered beneath its vines. By the time people realized the damage, it had already covered millions of acres. Despite efforts to contain it, kudzu still creeps across the American South like a slow-moving plague. It may appear harmless from a distance, but this plant has rewritten the rulebook on invasive species. 16. English ivy. At first glance, English ivy appears to be the perfect touch of elegance. It climbs beautifully over fences, walls, and tree trunks, creating a classic storybook look. However, behind its graceful appearance lies a plant that quietly causes significant damage. Left unchecked, it strangles trees by wrapping tightly around them, blocking sunlight and weakening branches over time. It doesn't stop there. English ivy can creep into buildings, breaking apart bricks and creating long-term structural problems. It also smothers ground cover, displaces native plants, and serves as a breeding ground for pests and diseases. What was once prized as a low-maintenance ground cover has become a full-blown invasive species in many regions. These days, gardeners know better than to let this plant take root. 15th Tree of Heaven. With a name like Tree of Heaven, you'd expect something beautiful and harmless. But this fast-growing invader is anything but. It spreads aggressively, shoots up in poor soil, and quickly pushes out native trees and shrubs. Its roots release chemicals into the soil that prevent other plants from growing, making it nearly impossible for surrounding greenery to survive. The problems don't end there. This tree is also the preferred host of the spotted lanternfly, a pest that causes serious damage to crops and forests. Many gardeners and local governments now consider Tree of Heaven a major threat. Once it takes hold, it's notoriously difficult to remove, often requiring repeated cutting and chemical treatment. It may look like just another roadside tree, but letting it grow comes with serious consequences. 14. Watercress. Watercress was once a common feature in cottage gardens, particularly near streams and shaded ditches. Its peppery, crisp leaves added a fresh kick to sandwiches and salads. People valued it for more than just its flavor, as it was rich in vitamin C, calcium, and iron. For years, it was a working-class staple, grown in clumps along natural water sources or in shallow beds kept moist by hand. But the problem wasn't the plant itself, it was the water. Over time, watercress became associated with waterborne parasites, such as liver flukes, particularly in areas where livestock and humans shared the same water supply. That changed everything. Unless you had perfectly clean, moving water, you were taking a serious gamble. Gradually, watercress slipped out of garden plans. Folks turned to safer greens, and the once common plant started fading into the background. 13th Nightshade Family. The Nightshade family is one of the trickiest groups in the garden. It includes familiar favorites like tomatoes, potatoes, and eggplants, but it also hides some dangerous relatives. Belladonna, also known as deadly nightshade, is one of the most toxic plants in this group. Its dark berries look deceptively inviting, especially to children or curious animals, but just a few can cause serious harm. Belladonna contains potent alkaloids such as atropine and scopolamine that affect the nervous system. In the past, some people tried to use it for medicine or cosmetics, unaware of its toxic strength. Symptoms from ingesting it can range from confusion and hallucinations to paralysis and even death. While some nightshades are safe when appropriately cultivated, this one earned its place on the list of plants best left out of the garden. 12th, Jimsonweed, Devil's Snare. Jimsonweed goes by many names: Devil's Snare, Moonflower, Thornapple, and every one of them hints at trouble. It grows wild with trumpet-shaped flowers and spiky seed pods that look more magical than menacing. But this plant is loaded with tropane alkaloids, dangerous hallucinogens that affect the nervous system and can be deadly in the wrong dose. In colonial America, British soldiers once accidentally ate it and spent days in delirium. And that's not an isolated incident. Curious foragers, experimental teens, and even some herbalists have all been caught off guard by its strength and unpredictability. The scary part? It often grows unnoticed on roadsides, in fields, or at the edge of old gardens. It may look wild and whimsical, but it's nothing to play with. Most gardeners today know to steer clear of this eerie beauty. 11th, Pigweed. Pigweed might sound harmless, but it's one of those vegetables that quietly outstayed its welcome. During tough times, such as the Great Depression, families turned to pigweed because it was free, fast-growing, and rich in nutrients, especially iron and calcium. Its leaves were cooked like spinach, and for a while, it earned its place in backyard gardens. But here's the problem. Pigweed doesn't play nice. It spreads aggressively, dropping thousands of seeds that can sprout years later. It steals water and nutrients from other plants, quickly overtaking vegetable beds. Some species, like Palmer amaranth, have even developed resistance to herbicides, making them nearly impossible to control. It may have once fed hungry families, but today, pigweed is classified as an invasive weed in many areas. A survival staple turned garden nuisance, now banned or avoided entirely. 10. Purple leucostrife. Purple loosestrife once charmed gardeners with its tall, bright violet spikes that lit up wetlands and borders. But this beauty turned invasive fast. Each plant can produce millions of tiny seeds that spread by wind, water, and animals, quickly crowding out native wetland plants that birds and fish depend on. Once it takes over, it forms thick stands that are almost impossible to remove. It reduces water flow, changes soil chemistry, and destroys habitats. Despite its ornamental appeal, purple loosestrife has become one of the most aggressive wetland invaders in North America. Gardeners and conservationists now treat it as a major ecological threat. What started as a splash of color turned into a slow-moving disaster that's still being fought today. 9. Giant hogweed. Giant hogweed is one of those plants that looks too strange to be real. Towering up to 14 feet, with massive umbrella-shaped flowers and thick, spotted stems, it could be mistaken for something out of a fantasy novel. But the real danger lies in its sap. When it comes into contact with skin and is exposed to sunlight, it can cause burns, sometimes severe enough to scar permanently or even damage the eyes. Originally introduced from Asia as an ornamental plant, it quickly gained a reputation as a public health risk. Children were especially vulnerable, often drawn in by its odd appearance. In some states, giant hogweed is now tracked and removed by environmental agencies. You can't handle it with bare hands, and even mowing it down spreads its seeds. Few plants are banned for hurting people just by brushing against them, but this one is. 8. Castor bean. The castor bean plant features striking, large, tropical-looking leaves, tall stems, and oddly spiky seed pods. In old-fashioned gardens, it was often planted for dramatic flair or even to repel pests. But hidden inside those seeds is ricin, one of the deadliest natural toxins known. Just a handful of chewed seeds can cause organ failure or death. The danger wasn't always obvious. Gardeners admired its bold form and rapid growth, unaware of the risks it posed, especially to children or pets. In the wrong hands, castor seeds became more than just a gardening hazard. Today, planting it is often discouraged or restricted, particularly in urban or family-friendly areas. What once passed as a showy ornamental has become a cautionary tale about beauty, poison, and the need to know exactly what's growing in your backyard. 7. Black nightshade. At first glance, black nightshade might look like just another garden berry plant. It grows rapidly, produces clusters of small, shiny fruits, and blends in with other members of the nightshade family, such as tomatoes and peppers. But this plant has a long and complicated history. While certain parts of black nightshade are used in traditional medicine around the world, the entire plant can be extremely toxic if misidentified or improperly prepared. The unripe berries and leaves contain solanine, a compound known to cause nausea, vomiting, and, in some cases, more severe symptoms. Back in the day, kids would mistake the berries for wild snacks, unaware of the risks. Gardeners eventually caught on, and the plant's reputation quickly sank. It became one of those plants folks just didn't want near their families or food crops. Even now, many people steer clear, and for good reason. 6th, Japanese knotweed. Japanese knotweed arrived in America with good intentions. It was sold as a fast-growing ornamental plant with lush green foliage, perfect for erosion control and concealing unsightly fences. But what followed was a nightmare. This plant grows through pavement, cracks foundations, and chokes out everything in its path. Once it takes root, it's nearly impossible to remove. It spreads underground via rhizomes, a thick root system that can extend far beyond what's visible. Cutting it back only makes it worse. Some homeowners have found that it lowers property values because of the damage it causes. Once admired, knotweed has become one of the most notorious invasive plants worldwide. You can still spot it along roadsides and riverbanks, growing seemingly unstoppable. But don't let its bamboo-like stems fool you. This one's a garden destroyer. 5. Water hyacinth. At first glance, water hyacinth looks like a dream, soft lavender flowers floating gently on a pond, broad green leaves bobbing in the breeze. But beneath the surface, it's a full-blown ecological disaster. This plant multiplies faster than most people realize, forming dense mats that suffocate fish, block sunlight, and choke out native aquatic life. It was brought to the U.S. in the late 1800s as a decorative plant. People loved how fast it grew until it started growing too fast. In places like Florida and Louisiana, water hyacinth overwhelmed rivers and lakes, making it nearly impossible for boats to pass and disrupting local fishing industries. It's banned in many states today, and for good reason. A single plant can turn into thousands in a matter of months. What once felt like a pretty accent turned into an unmanageable threat. 4. Oleander. Oleander is stunning. Its thick green leaves and showy pink, red, or white flowers make it a favorite for hedges and warm weather gardens. But underneath that beauty is danger. Every part of the plant is toxic: leaves, stems, sap, and even the smoke from burning it. Ingesting just a leaf can cause heart problems, nausea, and in severe cases, death. It was widely planted in the past due to its toughness and drought tolerance, especially in the South and Southwest. But its track record for accidental poisonings, especially among children and pets, eventually caught up with it. Some cities now discourage or restrict it. Today, you'll still see it along highways or in old yards, but fewer gardeners are willing to take the risk. When something that pretty can kill you, it's probably best left out of the backyard. 3. Sassifras. There was a time when nearly every American kitchen had sassafras somewhere. Whether it was in the form of homemade root beer, teas, or even old family remedies, its roots had that warm, spicy scent folks loved, and its leaves were sometimes dried and used in soups and stews. Gardeners often planted it for both its beauty and usefulness. But as it turns out, sassafras came with a downside. The plant contains a natural compound called safrole, which scientists later linked to liver damage and cancer when consumed in large amounts. Once those studies came out, everything changed. Sassafras went from a backyard favorite to something better left alone. It wasn't banned in the strictest sense, but it disappeared from most gardens practically overnight. People just didn't want to take the risk anymore. 2. Tansy. Tansy was once a common sight in old gardens, with its bright yellow button-like flowers and feathery leaves. People used it for everything, from treating fevers to repelling bugs. But what many didn't realize was just how toxic it could be. The plant contains compounds that, in high doses, can cause liver and nerve damage. Too much of it, and you're not curing anything. You're poisoning yourself. In the past, it was often brewed as a tea or rubbed directly onto the skin. Some even used it in cooking. But over time, the risks became clear. People started getting sick. Livestock that grazed near it sometimes died. Eventually, gardeners began to steer clear. While it still grows wild in many places, tansy has lost its place in most home gardens. Its danger wasn't just hidden, it was underestimated. 1. Poison hemlock. Poison hemlock doesn't look evil. In fact, it resembles wild parsley, with delicate white flowers and lacy green leaves. But it's one of the most deadly plants in North America. Every part of it is toxic. A small amount, chewed or brewed, can shut down the nervous system, slow your heart, and stop your lungs. There's no antidote. That's what makes it so dangerous. In ancient Greece, it was used for executions. Socrates drank it as his final punishment. And in America, it's often mistaken for edible herbs by foragers. Even touching it without gloves can be risky. It spreads easily, thrives in disturbed soil and hides in plain sight. Older generations learned to spot it and steer clear. Today, knowing what it looks like isn't just gardening knowledge, it's a survival skill. If one plant deserves to be banned, it's this one. Some plants disappeared for a reason. Our grandparents learned which ones not to grow, and their lessons still matter today. If you learned something new, subscribe, and see you in the next video.